All right, Big Man. Today is Tuesday. It's March 30th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. I'm here with Chief. Chief, how we doing?
Doing pretty well. You're in Detroit. I'm in Chicago. We have like a ticking time bomb here, doing it over Zoom because it is windy and the dog is afraid of the wind. So as soon as we get like a big gust here that rattles the screen door or something, we're gonna have hound barks going on in
There's
here.
going to be some problems.
Yeah, I got my finger on the mute button ready to go.
You're going to be screaming, George, the patent to George.
Yeah, exactly. It's coming.
Yeah, good. Well, interesting topic today. Obviously, we try to stay topical. The Sunday's Easter. So we're beginning some Easter stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's another one. We did one similar to this around Christmas, where it's like these traditions have been around so long that no one even knows how they started or cares to look it up. Well, I care. I care. I want to know, like, how do you get a rabbit that lays eggs? Like, how is that a thing? So we're gonna get to the bottom of that and where Easter comes from and all the other weird shit connections to it.
There we go. So we'll get into Easter, but before we do anything, Chief, we can't start the pod and not talk about Miller Lite. So that's what we're going to do. Obviously, we are over Zoom right now.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people still, maybe if you haven't your shot, maybe you're still, playing it safe. You're joining people over Zoom, and maybe you're having a nice Miller Lite over Zoom, and that's what we like to do.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it's we're recording this at 4:45. As soon as we're done, I'm heading out to my back deck because it is windy, but it's a nice spring day. I'm going to crack that Miller Lite. I'm going to get a little bit of sun. It's like the perfect, still kind of cool out, but you want to have that beer in your hand. It's almost oddly like tailgate weather. I love it. This is like my favorite temperature. I'm going to wear a sweatshirt and drink a Miller Lite, and I'll be the happiest guy on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, nothing brings Miller time together better than weather. So that's great. That's going to be a nice day on the deck. So Miller Lite, great taste with only 96 calories and 3.2 carbs. However, you or your friends are enjoying Miller time. You can have the original light beer delivered by going to MillerLite.com/redline and find the delivery options near you. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
I mean, you could say that's a miracle. You could say that that's a miracle that beer has that few calories, that few carbs, and still tastes that good. That's a work of God.
Great. It's a miracle show.
Mm-hmm. So we get into it? You want to get into Easter, Ed? You want to know where all this shit comes from? Why we're celebrating, when we celebrate, all that stuff?
I'm dying to know why this big fucking bunny is a part of the extravaganza. So yes.
we're gonna meander our way to that because, like every other Christian holiday, it's not a Christian holiday. So we learned that with Christmas. We learned that with Valentine's Day. These early Christians might have just had the greatest marketing team of all time, and they just were able to convince people like, yeah, like your holidays are great, but they just needed a little bit different theme. We're going to keep them. Just come on into the fold, give us your money, and you will be saved and you will be redeemed. Just believe in Jesus and you can still have your holidays. And that's still the same thing with Easter. So it's pagan in origin, which means, I think we've said this before, but we use pagan as like a catch-all, meaning like basically anything before Christianity or anything that really kind of worship more of like the sun and the stars and the movements and seasons and things like that. And that's what Easter is all about. So like even the reason that it changes its date every year instead of being like on Christmas or whatever, it's always the first Sunday after the first full moon of the spring equinox. So it has to do with like the movement of both the sun, which would be the equinox. So that was on March 21st. That's when you start getting more daylight, things like that. And then it's after the first full moon. So sometimes, depending on when the full moon is in cycle, that's why you just never quite know when Easter is going to be, unless you're into, I don't know, astrology or something. But it has to do with both the sun and the moon, and that like has nothing to do with Jesus. Like it does and it doesn't. But the reason that we have it on those dates is because people have been celebrating on this date since forever. Like we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And the word Easter itself.
Well, that's pretty fascinating right off the gate, right? Because a big thing about Easter that is always tough is you never know when it is.
Oh, I mean, it's the worst. Like, how are you going to plan your spring breaks? How are you going to, when are you coming home? When's Easter? When's this? Yes. When's that? Like, for whatever reason, Thanksgiving being the fourth Sunday or fourth Thursday of every November, like I got that down, even though it kind of moves a little bit. This is the only one where you're just throwing a dart at the calendar in the spring and hoping for you got the right Sunday. Cause it's been on my birthday before, which is April 13th. But I know it's also been early, like early to mid March. So it just doesn't make any sense. So
Yeah.
that thing is just, and it's because they just tracked it with some calendar that was before we cared about that stuff.
Yeah, and it's like Christmas 25. They should hang that in like stadiums rafters because 25 belongs to Christmas.
Retire it. It's done. Easter is one of these weird floating ones. You don't know when you're going to have that day off. Did you guys get Good Friday off when you were in Catholic school?
No, we did not.
No, you guys did they let you eat?
Yeah, obviously you
fast?
can't eat meat and stuff, but like that was like a big like I think you went to mass Good Friday. Like I think there was a big, that's a big week, the Holy Saturday, and there was like
Yeah.
small
Oh, it's
stuff.
a huge week.
Yeah.
Huge week. I used to negotiate with my mom when I was younger and be like, if I can, because I went to public school, I'd be like, I'll stay home from school on that Friday and I'll do like the full fast. Like I won't eat until sundown because I love Jesus so much, but I'll be too malnourished to go to school. So that was kind of like, and she would just be like, you're going to school, like go to school. But I'd always try to pull that one because I heard Catholic schools got that off and it was for that reason. So I always try to make that happen.
Yeah, there was absolutely no one fasting, I could tell you that.
Yeah.
At least not, maybe by choice, but
Right. Yeah. But that's why that date is just flying all over the beginning of the calendar. That word Easter, it's actually a pagan word. So that word has literally nothing to do with Christianity at all. It was adopted from a Saxon goddess. So Saxons were like in England and France and things like that in the 8th century. So we had 800 years of Jesus. We didn't get the word Easter, meaning the resurrection, until for 800 years. That's fucking crazy. But it comes from this other Saxon goddess where I remember they always just take whatever they're doing and make it part of Christianity. And her name was Eastera. I might be pronouncing that incorrectly, but that's where that word originally comes from, is from some Saxon language that doesn't exist anymore. Nobody speaks it. And it was just like the official stamp, like, hey, like we're mixing these two holidays together and we're going to call it Easter, but it means the resurrection, where everybody knows what we're talking about. We're talking about Jesus, but we're using the word for your goddess, and let's just go forward and pretend that nobody cared or noticed.
What I feel like a big thing is like, don't be vain. That's kind of vain, right?
How is that vain?
She's using her name. She she makes a name after herself.
Well, Easter, she was just like a goddess, but we can go to that. It goes back way longer than that. So they think that word, that goddess, Eastera, which became the word for the resurrection of the holiday for the resurrection of Jesus, that, like I said, that was 8th century. But they're thinking it goes all the way back to the Sumerians, which is one of, if not the first civilization that they've been celebrating this springtime. They've had these festivals going all the way back to ancient Sumeria, which was I think they said that civilization started almost 5,000 years before Jesus and ran for 2,500 years until like 1900 BC. So it was like, that was like the first real ancient civilization. And they had a goddess named Ishtar. And Ishtar was the god of war and also the goddess of sexual love, getting down, shout out Roman, and the goddess of rain and thunder. So like that, like those things that you associate with spring being rain and thunder, and then also love, and we're saying love and sexuality being fertility. So all that stuff that happens in the spring, you see the birds are chirping, animals buzzing around. Like that's one of those things where it's like everybody's more fertile in the spring, and that's where they think that comes from. So like more plants are growing, things are just kind of out there in nature. The sun's coming out, things are growing, you're planting things, and that was like a goddess of those things, this Ishtar. And for whatever reason, and they, and like people like linguists will say like Ishtar because it's so similar to this other goddess in Saxon. They think that that idea and that goddess, because Sumerians, like, they were able to write and they had like some trade with bordering things in Europe, that ideas can pass. And then by, after 1,000 years or whatever, everybody was celebrating Ishtar, but they're putting their own little accent on it. So Ishtar becomes Eastera, and then eventually becomes Easter, is what they think. But for whatever reason in art, Ishtar, like ancient art, is always displayed as a rabbit. So the rabbit was adopted, same thing with Easter, because it was already just so much into like the art and so much into like that time of year, and they just made that rabbit the symbol of that holiday, and they just kept it. So it was a symbol that goes back to this Ishtar, and they're like, well, we like Ishtar and everybody likes the rabbit, so we're just going to keep the rabbit. And
Okay.
the egg is also a symbol of fertility. And that became like a thing that in Germany more than anywhere else, this Easter bunny leaving the eggs, and they would do the colored eggs, and they would fast, and that would be like their first like big meal. And this would be like to symbolize, again, fertility, but also being able to eat like real food again, because you went the whole winter eating, shit, boiled meats, like canned vegetables, just trying seeds and stuff, trying to get by through the winter. And then this was like supposed to celebrate, hey, like we're going to be able to eat like lettuce and vegetables and stuff like that because our crops are growing again. And that's where like that symbol of the rabbit kind of maintained. And it also then was latched on to the Virgin Mary, because the Virgin Mary, Christ was born from her, even though she was a virgin. And they used to think that rabbits could get pregnant and be fertile without technically losing their virginity. That's what like, there weren't scientists back then, but people thought that. So they like to associate that with her. So if you look at like, there's all sorts of, Middle Ages and medieval art of the Virgin Mary all through like the Renaissance, there's rabbits all over those pictures. And same thing with like old churches in Europe, you'll see like statues of rabbits in there. And it's because like, oh, if this is the Church of Mary or whatever, they'll put little statues of rabbits in there because they associated that with her. That became a symbol with her because they believe that rabbits could get pregnant without having sex.
So it was a symbol. It was the American eagle to America.
Yeah, exactly. It was their symbol of fertility and virginity and all those things. And that just, the Christians, like, just again, they didn't want to get rid of these traditions. So they found new ways to incorporate them in their own message while blending these holidays that people were already doing. And that, like, this is kind of symbolized in Easter and Easter traditions more even so than Christmas, because there's like Christmas, we can explain it with this or that, three kings, whatever. But this is just like, nah, they like rabbits. Let them keep the rabbits, and we'll just lay these chocolate eggs. And it became a thing to like give presents and stuff. Really in the 1800s, like candies and whatever. With same thing with Germany. So it started in Germany, and then all those German immigrants came over to the United States, go to Pennsylvania and stuff like that, 1700s, 1800s. And that's when it became like a more commercialized, widely accepted thing internationally, but especially in the United States, that the Easter Bunny comes and gives you colored eggs and chocolate and things like that. And that was the symbol.
I don't hate that. I guess that's like I guess it's not. I don't want to say unfortunate, but it's like the bunny could be so cartoonized and so like,
Yeah.
because I'm thinking of the eagle now, and the eagle, like, sure, you got like the Eagle Man commercials and shit, but it's always kind of true to itself,
Mm-hmm.
like the bunny just gets so like
I
lost
also
with
think
what it
it's
really
so
looks like.
like simple, where it's like some of these things it's hard to explain to Jesus, to a small child. It's like, hey, like, what's Easter all about? Well, you see, this guy had these buddies, and he was like talking about this new way to live, and one of them was like, hey, fuck that guy. And they had him arrested for 30 pieces of silver, and then they nailed him to a cross and whipped him to death. That's a tough story to sell to a
Yeah,
toddler. It's a
very
way
true.
easier sell to be like, here's a white little cute cuddly bunny who brings you chocolate. How's that? And
Yeah,
that's a way better deal.
it is. It's I I get it. I get it. I was skeptic at first, but no, I get it.
Well, that, and then also like even like if you go to church, I feel like most churches have the cross with Jesus nailed to it on there. That's tough to look at. Like that's just like I don't know why they always make that the focal point, being like, here's a dead body on a cross right front and center. You can't look at anything else when you walk into church. It's tough symbolism. So if you can replace that for small like a Nerf version of Easter, and you do it with a bunny and some chocolate to get people to buy in, then you hit them with the bad news later. I think that's an okay way to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That sounds right.
that sounds right. And then, of course, again, it's all about, Easter is about the resurrection and like a death and then a rebirth. And that is a theme that is in like every single religion ever. So this whole thing, I think we talked about this at one, maybe it was last year, about the Christmas thing, where there's so many characters in other gods and other religions that have basically the exact same story as Jesus, born of a virgin on December 25th, died on a cross, died for 3 days, and rose again. So we're talking Jesus has that basic archetypal story. Horus, which was an ancient god of Egypt, has it. Krishna, which is an ancient god of India. Dionysus, ancient god of Greece. Mithra, ancient god of Persia. You know who else? A very prominent figure who has a death and rebirth story like baked into like their greatness.
Who's that?
Fucking Harry Potter. Okay.
Ooh.
And you want to know why like Harry Potter, like what's her face? J.K. Rowling is richer than the Queen of England. All she really did was take all these stories like everyone else has done from the beginning of time. Like Dionysus was first, and then or Mithra was first, and then Horus, and all they just keep building and stacking on and changing the names and changing some of the characters and dressing it up a bit. But it all has like a lot of the same motifs and themes all throughout those religions. Harry Potter's the same fucking thing.
Isn't that just about everything, right? Like I'm pretty sure. I don't know if it's like the ethos or all that shit. I don't know the definitions to all those, but I'm pretty sure like Macbeth is like the basis for a lot of.
They all kind of follow those same archetypical stories.
Mhm.
And like that, and there's a lot of them in Shakespeare. There's a lot of them in everything.
Yeah.
And it's like I feel like it gets lost sometimes, but that is a thing in Harry Potter where they goes down, to this underbelly of Hogwarts or whatever, and he sees this giant snake, basilisk, whatever, and get to, and then later on, so that's like a death and rebirth thing with the rising of the phoenix. And then he does the same thing at the end. Like he gets touched by the fucking Voldemort, and he gets killed, and he comes back to life, and he's, basically the Messiah for Hogwarts. So this is like the same thing that always happens, and Jesus is no different. They just do that, and they say that the resurrection of the sun, which is Easter, celebrate after the spring equinox because that is when daylight officially overtakes the darkness. So Jesus, the symbolism with Christmas, he's born on the 25th, but then you still have all this time to go before there's more daylight hours than darkness before, and that was like the Horus thing. They had the mythological thing where Horus fought his like half brother Set like every night, and he would lose at night and win in the morning. And then they did that on a larger scale where he would lose for half the year, and then he overcomes them in the spring. And then with that comes all the great things of sunshine and crops and banging and all of that. So that's like an interesting connection there too. And then like the final one is just like Jesus lets it happen. This is like the psychological impact of like what they think the resurrection means, and like death and rebirth in general, is that like they said he died voluntarily. And that is, if you talk to like psychologists and stuff, they find much lower instances of PTSD for soldiers that were like, if you're a part of a raid where you're acting on something, like you're in control, like you're going in to get bin Laden versus driving down the road and there's an IED that you didn't expect, like you'll have way more, like you might be in like worse gunfire, but you'll have way more PTSD if you were on like the back foot, if you were not like the aggressor. So like
Okay.
doing things and facing scary things voluntarily is like a way healthier way to do it. And it also like that's how you let parts of yourself die, because if you have like bad ideas or bad habits, and these are things that you're probably comfortable with, if you voluntarily like give up these things, you're going to have a way higher success rate than if it happens to you.
Okay.
So that part of voluntary sacrifice is like a big motif as well. And that's the same thing with the phoenix. Like part of you has to die in order for you to be reborn stronger.
Mhm.
So that's kind of Easter in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jinx.
Yeah.
Both nutshelled at the
Yeah.
same time.
Eggshell, chocolate eggshell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
So I don't know. I think that's all I got on Easter. I'd love to have your buddy Father Foley on for one of these so we can ask him, like, is this true?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. And now that I think about it, I think people are gonna jump down my throat. It was always Easter break in Catholic school, like so. But I think it was the week after instead of spring break. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like it was.
Oh, so you would just let the party keep
Yeah,
going.
I'm pretty sure it was the week after.
Okay.
Like it was, Good Friday, and then like
Good
yeah.
Friday, you do Easter, and then you have the following week off.
Yes, that's the way it was.
That's not a bad way to do it.
No, not at
Yeah.
all. So, but all
Yeah,
right,
it's
Chief.
crazy how all these things get started, though. We've just been doing them for forever, and no one asks where it come from. But this is, I don't know. I feel like this is like a good Easter Sunday story. Like actually, it was the Germans who kind of made the Easter Bunny stick. Like they were
Yeah,
that.
who would have known?
Who would have known? Not me.
No,
How you do?
I just found out. Yeah. All right, Chief. Thank you. We'll be back tomorrow, right? Or
We can
when?
come
Yeah,
back tomorrow.
we'll be back tomorrow. We're gonna be talking about the canal. It's all the
It's
rage
unstuck.
right now.
It's unstuck.
I know, and I don't. Is this? I don't know. We'll get into it. I have a
Okay.
lot of questions, but.
All right. Yep. We'll see you Wednesday. World News Wednesday.
All right, there. World News Wednesday back. So, all right, everybody, that's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.